We need to look at AI as part of the solution to climate action. We need to accelerate climate action because of the emergency in which we are and the vulnerabilities that we face with the impacts of climatic changes. So we are looking at AI, digital solutions, as first as an opportunity to accelerate the pace of taking decisive action on both climate mitigation and climate adaptation. Now, having said that, of course there are concerns. Looking at AI from a broader environmental perspective, we see that data centers, for example, do have a significant footprint when it comes to electricity consumption. Now, if your electricity grid is dirty, as we say, meaning if there are a lot of fossil fuels in the grid, in the mix, then obviously data centers and AI can drive a higher electricity consumption, with that higher emissions, and with that we are compounding the problem that we are trying to resolve, right? Secondly, the water is always a big issue. Data centers do need a lot of water for cooling. And that, depending on where you position these data centers, could become eventually an environmental issue, challenge for the water bodies, either rivers, underground water, depending on what it is and where it is, but that could become an issue. These are the primary concerns, I would say, from an environmental perspective. So when it comes to climate mitigation, which is to look at greenhouse gas emissions and how we can lower and eventually move to net zero the greenhouse gas emissions, AI can play an important role. Why? Because we get more precision of knowing where are greenhouse gas emissions coming from. We can pinpoint, for example, I give you an example just to illustrate this a little bit better than talking in generalities. Methane emissions. These are very powerful greenhouse gases, and they go up in the atmosphere basically from three sources: oil and gas, waste, and agriculture. In the oil and gas sector, UNEP has worked over the last 6-7 years on a program that is satellite-based, that can pinpoint in the oil and gas sector where are the methane leaks. So we can see where from the gas pipelines, from the refineries, from the installations and operations, where exactly are the leaks. Now, that is possible because of the huge data processing capacities of AI-driven computer systems. Otherwise, that would not be possible. Now, once you know where the emissions are coming from, you can do something about it. And we have implemented a system called MAS, which is an alert system to the operators of such gas facilities and gas operations, to alert them that there is a leak. Leak means that methane is being emitted into the atmosphere. And so this is an example of where AI can become part of a powerful solution to climate mitigation. I can give you, if you allow me, I can continue another example on climate adaptation, let's say. Climate adaptation in the sense of early warning systems. The Secretary General of the UN has initiated something called Early Warning for All. This is very powerful as an advocacy campaign because it points at communities, vulnerable communities, that do not have access at the moment to functional early warning systems. And there, AI is at the moment revolutionary in many ways. Climate projections and weather forecasts have become much more precise. And we have added actually a few more days for weather forecasts, for the precision with which weather forecasts can be made. if you have 3 or 4 days more in advance knowing what is coming, that gives you more lead time to alert those who are living in vulnerable areas, low-lying areas, in river valleys, wherever it is. So AI is powering weather forecasts and climate scenarios to make them more precise and more powerful. Now that, I think, is a good example of where we can put AI to good use. And by the way, this was one of the discussion points at the AI summit, which I have attended here in Delhi. I would say, I mean, it depends how you define what AI is, right? It's a fashionable term that is being used all over the place. I would say AI, if we define it broadly, digital solutions are already in place and have been in place for many years. They just get more powerful, I would say, with the additional push that AI has brought to end-use applications. And end-use applications we are using and have been using a lot in our work on climate adaptation with vulnerable communities, when it comes to especially forecasting in rural areas on how the weather and the climate with the projection of the next 2 or 3 months will be. And that will help. This is informing farmers when to plant their crops. It is informing farming communities when to eventually shift to drought-resistant crops instead of planting the traditional ones. If the forecast is that there will be a spring with severe drought coming. So these are already applications on the ground that are in place, that are working. Many of them are pilots, not all of them, but we are rolling out in UNEP. We have programs, to roll out such solutions at a grander scale. This is an important question, and thank you for bringing this up, the guardrails. I mean, it's a little bit almost like the Wild West. There are many startup companies working in that field of AI. There are many big corporations, trying to dominate the market. And institutions, both international institutions and also national institutions, often are slow in catching up with the technological development. There is an institutional inertia, in a way, that we are seeing. So our rules and regulations when it comes to procurement, when it comes to institutionalizing this whole area and field of AI, often, I mean, this is actually the situation in which we are, I think, is very slow. So what we need is not to kill AI with over-regulations, not to discourage entrepreneurs and startups to come up with innovative solutions that use AI applications, but what we need is a robust international discussion on how wide or how narrow those guardrails actually should be. And this needs to be done in a very smart way. If they are too wide, then anything happens and there is no guidance on anything when it comes to energy performance standards, for example, of these data centers, whether they should be powered and to what extent with renewable energy instead of feeding dirty electricity into the data centers, or the water use, all of these. As the UN, obviously, we are not telling any government and anybody what to do. That's obvious. But we can come up with best practice, we can come up with recommendations, and the Secretary General and his team, they're actually working actively in that space in UNEP as well. But yeah, and if it is too narrow, the guardrails, as I said earlier, then you are killing an industry before it has actually taken off, and that's not what we want, because we see a lot of potential, as I described earlier. So my key expectations of deploying AI solutions and applications in the climate field are that when it comes to the greenhouse gas inventories, meaning robust data that tells us how much are we emitting, from where are the emissions coming. That robustness of the data, that is a key in actually trusting climate science and trust in the data, that AI will help us to improve that. And we are seeing that. Because the precision that AI brings to the collection of raw data, that and the analysis of that data, that is something unique. So that is one area where I do see AI making a huge contribution in the climate field. And the second, as I said, is basically the response to the climate crisis in terms of early warning systems. I have described that. There, I think, is way to go. And the third one is when it comes to climate adaptation and climate resilience. We are working currently here in India, where I am, on a program with cooling to respond to the heat crisis, the extreme heat that many Indian cities are facing in urban areas, in buildings, in urban spaces. And, there are digital solutions, for example, on heat mapping. Heat mapping is very data intense. The processing of that data can be done and is being done, and we are doing it actually here in India in a number of cities where we are deploying AI capacities to do granular heat mapping, so that we know exactly where are the worst areas within a city that are affected by extreme heat, so that we can roll out solutions such as passive cooling solutions and techniques in the right spots. So this is an example that I have seen myself here in India this week of where those advanced digital solutions can make a contribution to climate adaptation and climate resilience. So the first thing that stood out for me is the dynamic and the energy that was palpable in the convention center there at the conference. The number of companies, startups, but also big corporations, Google, and they were all there. Then you had the political leaders. They were all there. So what I saw is that there is almost a new field of action and interaction between public sector at the international level, public sector at domestic level, private sector, talking about small local startups, but also private sector at the international level. So you have a number of players at all levels, public, private, international, domestic, local, that come together in the summit that I have attended around a topic that is very promising to give us solutions. I'm not saying AI can rescue us from all the evils that we are facing. No, it's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if we learn how to incorporate AI tools, techniques, applications in the work that we are doing on climate and on other issues, then I think AI can make a good and very valuable contribution. And I've seen that energy and that positivity and that dynamic at the AI summit here. So in one sentence, I would say we have a long way to go, but we are on the right path in making AI solutions, AI applications, a valuable contribution to address global environmental issues, including climate change. What I would wish is that nobody gets a monopoly in managing data, that data is open to be used for advancing sustainable development, climate action, environmental action, social action in line with the SDGs. That's what I would wish, that that the data that is being generated, that is being processed, and that is being analyzed, and that is being made available through these wonderful little tools that we all have on our phones, right? That the data that is underpinning all of that is made available, is becoming available to really solve these global environmental and other problems that we are facing.